So Saddhanandi, you and I are going to be leading a retreat, aren't we? In February of this coming year.
Yes, Ratnaguna, from the 17th to the 21st of February. Yeah, and really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to working with you on this project. Yeah.
Me too. Me too. Looking forward to working with you. And everyone should put those dates in their diary, should they not?
Yes, including me, which I've just discovered I didn't have. So yes, everybody.
And who's it for, actually? I think it's for Mitras, order members. I don't know.
Yep, it's any order member and any Mitra, which feels quite a departure, actually, because often the retreats at Adhisthana and the ones that Adhisthana are hosting are often for the order. So I'm really, really pleased that we'll be doing it for Mitras and order members too. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So the theme, let's just talk a bit about the individual, the group, and the spiritual community. We'll begin with the second one of those. What do we mean by the group?
I suppose for me, it's to do with people not thinking through things for themselves, and also being very prone to the worldly winds. It's like when we're all functioning on the basis of pleasure or comfort or security, we're not willing to stand alone with something. So for me, the group is that it's a willingness to sort of ease back into a group of people and not stand alone, and at the same time not listen to or pay attention to one's own values, something like that.
For me, the group is an extremely strong, in oneself, there's a very, very strong desire to belong to a group. It's actually extremely hard to get yourself out of a group because it's so strong in us. It goes way, way back to caveman times, I suppose, this need to belong to a group. And sometimes it feels like when you're stepping out of the group, it feels really, really scary because, you might not be approved of anymore by your peers and so on. So that brings us to individuality then, isn't it? The individual is someone who's managed to emancipate themselves from the group, which is a really, really big achievement.
It is. It's making me think about community life immediately, just you describing it like that. And just often so easily is for me to compromise or not stand alone, even in the sense of, even in relationship to people that I know and love, because like you say, the desire to be part of the group is so strong.
Yeah, it's really, really strong, isn't it? Let's talk a bit about the individual then. So the individual is someone who's emancipated themselves from what we might call the need to belong to or the need for approval from other members of a group. But that's not the only characteristic of the individual, is it?
No, it isn't at all. I'm just trying to think what I would draw on in myself. I think ethics is a very strong characteristic, like really knowing that your actions have consequences. That feels very important for me.
And therefore, taking responsibility for your actions is a really important aspect of individuality, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not easy to do. Sometimes one can't bear the responsibility sometimes of one's actions.
Yeah. I suppose we should make a distinction here between the individual and the individualist. These are Sangharakshita's definitions, but the individual stands alone and takes responsibility for him or herself and their actions, where the individualist is still part of the group, but they're anti the group. So they still need the group for a sense of belonging, but they kind of disagree, mainly just for the sense of disagreement to give themselves some kind of strong identity. You're not one of those, Saddhanandi.
Oh dear, is it really obvious?
No, I've known you for a long time now. You're definitely not an individualist.
It's not just that you can just see me straight away and think that's not an individualist. It's not that, is it? This is a woman that's conforming a bit more.
Well, that's interesting. You just brought the word conforming in, and you could say that the individual doesn't conform, but nor do they not conform in the sense of I'm going to be an unconformist kind of person. They really do look at the whole situation and decide what is best to be done in that situation, regardless in a sense of themselves.
And I suppose we've all got those strands in ourselves, haven't we? We've all got some conformist aspects of ourselves and some individualistic aspects.
Yeah. I remember Sangharakshita used to talk about, once I was with him and he asked the question, how does one emancipate oneself from the group? Well, you do it head first. you become critical of the group. You see the limitations of the group and sometimes the cruelties of the group. And you see that and you begin to criticize. But that isn't enough, because just criticizing the group won't work on its own. So he talked about this Chinese idea of dragon's head, snake's body, where you've got this massive head that you can see what's wrong, but the body is really small and weak. And what he was getting at was, as well as seeing what's wrong with the group and seeing how great it would be to emancipate from yourself from the group, also you need positive emotion. Because very often when you criticize a group, it comes from a sense of anger and so on and other negative emotions, but you also need to be very, very emotionally positive as well.
And do you need to be most emotionally positive because you're going to have to stand alone? So you need to be well resourced, or what is that? Or is it because you're trying to communicate something that's going to be very difficult? So you need a lot of positive emotion to draw on that?
Both, I would say. Okay. So I really like your first point, because I used to think, and still do think, that the metta bhavana is a really great practice in the social sense. It's really good for having more positive emotions towards more people, but also having metta allows you to stand on your own 2 feet. I think the first quality that you need to become an individual is self-awareness, isn't it? That's what the very bedrock of individuality is, based on self-awareness, where you realize that I am a different person than everyone else.
Well, it's interesting that you raise that, because it makes me think of the solitary retreats that I used to go on when I was a very young mitra. And I once had to give a talk about friendship and spiritual community. And I talked about my biggest steps being through my going on solitary retreat for several weeks a year, because I think it gave me access to knowing more and more who I was, and a deeper aspect of self-awareness, as you describe. And then it meant I could actually communicate who I was to the other people. So it's just very interesting. I needed to go on solitary in order to become part of, or to become more individual and become part of a community.
And what's been the most challenging thing for you in your desire to be an individual?
I've taken on a lot of responsibility over the last 25 years, something like that, maybe probably before that actually, being chair at Taraloka and then being chair at Adhisthana. So some of the biggest challenges is for me to know how to engage with the collective, like know how to engage with the other people I'm working alongside, and also stay in contact with the values that I'm holding for the situation that I'm responsible for and for myself, and trying to make the right decisions for the right reasons, like make the right decision not just because I want to please that person over there or I want to make everybody happy, just like what is the right reason now to say yes to this or to say no to that. And it means putting a certain fear and preoccupation with others in a negative or a bad way, an unhelpful way, putting all of that to one side and standing alone a bit more. And that's been quite a challenge. Yeah.
That's very interesting, because I think my biggest challenge is also to do with other people, or has been with other people. And as you know, I used to be a director of Breathworks, the Triratna mindfulness company. And I was working with some very, very strong characters, some of them you know. And we'd have a meeting, a board meeting, and one of those strong characters, or maybe two of them working together, had put forward an idea which I didn't think was a very good one, or I could see problems with. And I would have then to say, no, I don't think it's a very good idea. I think there are real problems with that, and I don't think we should do it. And the thing I noticed was, if I was prepared, if it was on the agenda, I would think of all the reasons why I don't think it's a good idea, and I'd be ready to say it. But it was when something came that wasn't on the agenda, somebody just had an idea in the middle of the meeting that I didn't think was a good idea. What was interesting for me was then I was suddenly had a sense of fear, because I didn't think it was a good idea and I wasn't prepared for it. And at those points, it was I was either going to say it or I wasn't going to say it. either my individuality won out or my fear won out. And I can tell you, if my fear won out and I just stayed quiet and that idea went through, it was a terrible experience for me afterwards, knowing that I hadn't kept my integrity as a member of that board. But if I did say what I thought, I didn't think it was a very good idea. We usually had a really good discussion, and sometimes I was wrong, but it was good to be shown that I was wrong rather than just scurrying off into a corner like a frightened little mouse. So yeah, working with very strong individuals is a real practice for me.
It's very interesting that both you and I have both been talking about our relationship with other in order where it's challenged our individuality, which is such a classic Sangharakshita teaching, Bhante teaching, you know, that you need other people to sort of reflect us back, and for those collective situations for us to grow within those collective situations.
And that brings us nicely onto the spiritual community, isn't it? We've spoken about the individual, the group, and now the spiritual community. So is the spiritual community a Buddhist group, Saddhanandi?
How come you always get the privilege of asking the question first?
Because I get in first.
You're very good at that. Okay, what was the question again? I can't remember.
Is the spiritual community just another group? Is it a Buddhist group?
Okay. Well, I think on a bad day is just another group, Ratnaguna, I'm afraid. So in a way, all of us needs to make sure that it doesn't deteriorate in that direction. And that's very interesting. It's like we all need to take responsibility ourselves for the cultivation of a really alive, dynamic spiritual community. And that's quite a bit of work. And it means all of us functioning in the way that we've been describing in terms of confronting our own lack of individuality, if you like. And every time we do that, we'll bring the spiritual community up with us. But on a good day, it really does feel like, well, say Bhante describing it as a free association of individuals, and it really does feel like that. When you're all working on something together and you're willing to just serve that project, whether it's running a retreat, you know, which hopefully you and I will be touching in on when we're running this retreat, whether it's working on a big practical project together, where to some extent you're just giving yourself, it's enough just to give yourself at a very good level, and the rest of it takes care of itself, something like that. But you feel the free association strongly.
Well done with that answer, because you were put on the spot there, weren't you?